Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here today. Delighted to be here in Iceland, and also delighted to be at this event, this year's Arctic Circle Assembly. Because climate change is ravaging the Arctic more than elsewhere on Earth. Ice is melting, permafrost is showing, ancient glaciers, which have been present for thousands or even millions of years, are retreating. And this is not a distant future, this is happening right now. And there are broader, very serious repercussions for the world at large. The melting ice directly impacts global climate patterns. From the smallest islands to the biggest deserts, climate change is leaving its marks, altering ecosystems and human lives. And the shift in global climate patterns is putting pressure on our energy systems, reshaping infrastructure needs, and transforming the landscape of energy demand. And today, as EU Energy Commissioner, I'll briefly explain the European Union's energy situation and our efforts to transform our energy system over the past few years. This is important context in understanding the EU's engagement in the Arctic and our commitment to a fair and green energy transition. Dear friends, over the past 5 years, the EU's energy system has undergone a major overhaul. It started with the European Green Deal, when we became the first continent to commit to climate neutrality by 2050. And step by step, we began to put in place a new legal framework to drive the energy sector towards a decarbonized future. But then Russia started its unjustified war against Ukraine. And this gave us an extra, even more urgent push to be even more ambitious in our decarbonization, because there was urgent need to replace as much Russian natural gas with cleaner alternatives. And we are seeing the results now, and the numbers speak for themselves. Renewable energy generation in the EU is at an all-time high. So far, this year in 2024, wind and solar produced more electricity than all fossil fuel sources combined. Half of our electricity comes now from carbon-free sources, and renewables are the cornerstone of the EU's energy transformation. Solar, wind, but also hydropower, these are the resources that will power our future. And wind and solar energy is being installed in the past couple of years in record volumes. Europe has the largest pipeline of green hydrogen projects also in the world, and cutting-edge technologies like floating offshore wind and also offshore wind as such are being launched. And the bottom line is that renewable energy is our road to energy independence and our economic competitiveness. So we have to replace imported fossil fuels with homegrown renewables. And it is through this lens that the EU's view is towards our engagement with the Arctic. The Arctic's vast potential for renewable energy is untapped, and we should harness this to advance our decarbonization goals and enhance our energy security. And in doing so, we can also support the sustainable development in the Arctic. And this is a fundamental pillar of the EU's Arctic policy, which I will now turn to. The EU has a strong presence in the Arctic, especially in the European Arctic. In 2021, we updated the EU Arctic policy to reflect our current understanding and concerns. We emphasize that climate change poses the greatest threat to the Arctic, and we reinforce our stance that actions undertaken in the Arctic must prioritize the well-being and interest of those living here. And this approach is grounded in cooperation, sustainable development, and inclusion. One of the most commented actions in our 2021 Arctic strategy was the call for a moratorium of hydrocarbon extraction, including here in the Arctic. And today, with the global energy crisis behind us, we are reigniting discussions with our international partners to establish a binding global moratorium on hydrocarbon development in the Arctic. This includes not to purchase any such hydrocarbons if they were developed. So let's be clear. European Commission neither issues licenses for these activities nor purchases such fuels. However, we can foster a conversation. And this would build upon the partial moratorium in place in the United States, Canada, and Greenland, and ongoing discussions this year in Norway on drilling rules and ice border in the Barents Sea. We need to ensure that the fragile ecosystem of the Arctic, that these ecosystems are protected from possible industrial or maritime incidents. And we enter these discussions on the Arctic hydrocarbon moratorium with a clear understanding. The world does not need new oil and gas fields. The International Energy Agency has confirmed this in successive reports. And the ambitious pledge at COP28 last year to triple renewables and double annual energy efficiency improvements by 2030 underscores this further. Pursuing hydrocarbon exploration in the Arctic contradicts our collective commitment at COP28 to move away from fossil fuels. The science is clear. Our future hinges on a transition to a hydrocarbon-free world. The choice is stark: a future without hydrocarbons or potentially no future at all. The green and energy transitions can only be successful if everyone is involved and empowered. It's crucial that we support those most vulnerable, at least equipped, particularly local and indigenous communities in the Arctic, to achieve our shared objectives. Indigenous people face greater risks from climate change and environmental harm, yet they are vital guardians of our environment and biodiversity. So as we go through the green transition, we need to balance the deployment of renewables in the Arctic with traditional practices such as reindeering, herding, hunting, and the traditional lands and activities of indigenous people. There is also the challenge that many people in the Arctic work right now in the fossil fuel sector and live in areas with limited or difficult connectivity. A transition that does not benefit these citizens would not be satisfactory and would ultimately fail. But engaging people, organizations, and businesses will bolster the legitimacy and success of the energy transition. Europe's energy security is bound to the health of the Arctic. By protecting this vital region, by embracing renewables, and by ensuring a just transition, we will secure a better future for all. Thank you for your attention.